It was just after lunch on a Wednesday in Florida. A 17-year-old girl climbed onto an electric bike in a quiet new Port Richey neighborhood and rode away from the Tanager Square area in the early afternoon light. No screaming, no struggle, no flashing lights. Just a teenager in the middle of an ordinary day, heading out the way thousands of teens do all over the country. Her name is Mireya Kuhlmann. She was supposed to come home. Sometime after that short ride, the normal check-ins stopped. There was no, "I'm here," text, no call, no sound of the door opening again. As the hours stretched on, concern turned into fear. By that evening, her family had done the thing no parent ever wants to do. They reported their 17-year-old daughter missing. Now, Mireya's face is on missing teen alerts and sheriff's posts. She is listed as a missing, possibly runaway, 17-year-old, last seen leaving Tanager Square on an electric bike. For her family, those words don't reduce the fear. They raise it. Because whatever led her to ride away that afternoon, one fact remains. She has not come back. In this story, we're going to slow down and follow that last known moment, the search that followed, and what it really means when a teenager disappears in broad daylight and does not make it safely home. Before she became a line on a sheriff's post, Mireya Kuhlmann was simply a 17-year-old girl living her life in New Port Richey, Florida. Not a case number, not a headline, just a teenager in a Gulf Coast town where afternoons are bright, streets are familiar, and most parents expect that when their kids leave the house, they'll be back by evening. What we know for certain about Mireya is straightforward and painfully limited. She is 17 years old. She lives in the New Port Richey area, part of a suburban stretch north of Tampa filled with apartment complexes, plazas, and quiet residential streets. On paper, she fits the age that so many of you watching know well from your own families. Too old to be treated like a little kid, but still young enough that someone should be checking the clock when she walks out the door. Her picture on the missing teen alerts shows a girl who could be in any American high school. A face that carries a mix of youth and attitude, the kind of expression that says, "I know what I like," even if the rest of life is still being figured out. At 17, identities are built out of small things: music, friends, clothes, how you do your hair that week. None of that should ever have to sit next to the word missing. We are not given a long list of biographical details in the public notices about Mireya. There is no official write-up about her favorite subjects in school, no profile of her hobbies, no schedule of after-school activities. Those details exist, but they live in the memories of people who know her. The adults who have watched her grow up, the friends who message her late at night, the neighbors who have seen her come and go. That is how it is with most missing teen cases. The official record is short. The real life behind it is much bigger and mostly private. So instead of pretending we know more than we do, we have to think of Mireya the way many 17-year-olds are. She is at that age where independence and risk sit side by side. Old enough to ride around on an electric bike, to make plans with friends, to move through her own neighborhood without a parent right beside her. But still young enough that legally she is a child. Young enough that one decision on an ordinary afternoon can change the course of everything that comes after. If you are in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s, you may see shades of your own children or grandchildren in her story. You remember what it was like when a teenager in your house started wanting more freedom. The first times they went out alone. The first times you waited for a text. The first times you checked the clock a little too often. You remember that most of those days ended the same way. Keys in the door, a backpack dropped on the floor, an argument about being late, and a sigh of relief that at least they were home. In Mireya's case, that expected ending never came. What we do know is that, up until early December, there was some kind of rhythm to her life. Routines, familiar places, people who noticed when she was there and when she wasn't. On December 3rd, that rhythm broke. At some point, concern crossed the line into something more. Someone realized that she had not come back when she was supposed to, that messages were going unanswered, that this was not just a teenager stretching a curfew. When you reach that point, especially with someone who is 17, there is a difficult decision to make. Do you pick up the phone and turn a family worry into a formal missing person report? In Mireya's case, that call was made. Her name, age, and basic description were given to law enforcement. The last known location was noted. The fact that she had been riding an electric bike when she was last seen became a key detail. And with that, her situation moved from private fear to public record. From that moment on, Mireya was no longer just a teenager moving through her days in Port Richey. She became, officially, a missing 17-year-old. Her information was entered into systems meant to track kids who are unaccounted for. Her photo began to circulate beyond the circle of people who actually know her. The girl that some people in Florida had only ever passed on the sidewalk or in a parking lot without thinking twice about suddenly had a label attached to her. Missing. That label does not tell us who she is as a person, but it tells us enough to know that something is very wrong. A 17-year-old is not where she is supposed to be. The people responsible for her no longer know where she is. And a ride that should have been a short, ordinary trip away from home has become the starting point of a story that still does not have an ending. On the day everything changed, it started out like the kind of Florida afternoon most people forget as soon as it's over. It was Wednesday, December 3rd. In Port Richey, the sun sat high, the air soft the way it usually is along the Gulf in early winter. People were running errands, crossing parking lots with grocery bags, pulling into gas stations on their lunch breaks. There was nothing about that date or that time that announced itself as important. For Mireya and the people around her, it was supposed to be just one more ordinary day. At some point around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Mireya was seen in the area of Tanager Square. For those who don't know Port Richey, Tanager Square is the kind of place that blends into the background of everyday life. A cluster of homes and nearby businesses, sidewalks, parked cars, bits of shade and open sun. It's not a remote highway or a dark alley. It's the kind of area where people live, shop, and pass through without thinking twice. That's where she was last known to be. What we know, and what has been repeated in every notice since, is that Mireya left that area riding an electric bicycle. Not a car with tinted windows, not a bus on a long-distance route. An e-bike. The kind of transportation many teenagers now use to cover short distances between neighborhoods, plazas, and friends' houses. To anyone watching from a window or driving by, it would not have looked like the beginning of a crisis. It would have looked like a teenager heading out. The details beyond that are where the public record goes quiet. We are not told exactly which direction she rode, which street she turned onto first, or what her specific destination was. We do not have camera footage released to the public showing her passing by a certain landmark at a precise time. Those details may exist in case files or in the memories of people who saw her that day, but they have not been laid out for the rest of us to scrutinize. What we can say, without guessing, is that as far as official information goes, her trail in the open world stops with that description. leaving the Tanager Square area on an electric bike around the early afternoon of December 3rd. For a teenager in Florida, a short ride like that could have had a dozen perfectly normal purposes. Maybe she was going to meet someone. Maybe she was heading to a nearby store or to a different complex, or simply riding because that's what teens with e-bikes do when they have a little free time. The point is that in that moment, nothing around her screamed danger. It was daytime. It was a familiar community. People were out and about. If you are a parent or grandparent watching this, you can probably picture a version of this scene in your own life. A 17-year-old grabbing keys, a helmet, a bike, saying, "I'll be back later," and heading out the door. You might glance at the clock. You might remind them to be careful. But you don't immediately imagine that this is the last time you will see them that day. For the people who care about Mireya, that ride should have been one more forgettable part of a midweek routine. Instead, it became the last solid point on the timeline. After she rode away, the expected pattern failed to click into place. There was no casual update saying she'd arrived where she was going. No simple, "I'm on my way back." Afternoon turned into evening, and the absence started to grow louder. Someone checked the time, realized it had been too long. Someone tried a call or a message and watched as it went unanswered. At first, the usual explanations might have been enough. Maybe she lost track of time. Maybe her battery died. Maybe she decided to stay a little longer with whoever she was meeting. But as each of those possibilities started to feel less believable, worry edged into something sharper. There is a line that the adults in a teenager's life eventually recognize. It's the point where "she's probably fine" no longer fits what they're seeing. That evening, the people responsible for Mireya came to that line. They realized that whatever plans had been made for that afternoon, they had not ended the way they were supposed to. A girl who had ridden away on an electric bike in broad daylight had not come back. At that stage, you can't solve anything by pacing the living room and refreshing your phone. You have to decide whether this is serious enough to involve law enforcement. With Mireya, that decision was made. Sometime after that ride and the hours of silence that followed, a call went in to the sheriff's office. The details were given: her name, her age, her physical description, the fact that she had last been seen around Tanager Square, riding an electric bike, and had not returned. That call turned an ordinary Wednesday into something else entirely. From that moment on, December 3rd stopped being just another date on the calendar for one Florida family. It became the day she rode away and didn't come home, the last clear marker in a story that, even now, hasn't reached the ending everyone was expecting. When that first call went into the sheriff's office, the story of Mireya's disappearance moved from one living room in Port Richey into the wider world. Deputies took down the basic facts. 17 years old, female, last seen in the Tanager Square area around 1 in the afternoon, leaving on an electric bike. They noted her height and weight, her hair and eye color, and whatever she was believed to have been wearing that day. All of that became the foundation for the one thing every missing teen case needs at the start: a description that other people can recognize. Before long, the Pasco County Sheriff's Office did what law enforcement all over the country now does when a teenager vanishes. They put out an alert. It was not the kind of urgent emergency that shuts down highways or triggers sirens on everyone's phone, but it was serious enough to be shared across their channels and with local media. Mireya was listed as a missing, possibly runaway, 17-year-old. The notice repeated what had already become the key points in her story. Last seen on December 3rd, last seen around Tanager Square, last seen riding away on an electric bicycle. On paper, the wording is calm and cautious. It uses terms officers are trained to use. But for the people reading it who know her, those lines hit differently. Missing is one thing. Runaway is another. Put together, they form a label that can be hard for families to hear, because it sounds like a judgment about intent, when what they are living with is fear. Whether she left willingly or not, whether there was an argument or not, the simple fact remains the same. She is 17 years old, and she is not home. At the same time, that label is what allows the sheriff's office to push her information out quickly. A missing teen alert can reach a lot of people in a short amount of time, especially when it's posted on social media. Suddenly, Mireya's face and name were not just in one file and one household. They were on sheriff's Facebook pages, shared into local community groups, picked up by pages dedicated to missing children and vulnerable youth. For people scrolling through their phones in Pasco County that day, her image would have appeared between recipe videos, family updates, and holiday ads. A teenager's photo framed by the word "missing" in capital letters. The caption would have been simple: her name, age, physical description, the fact that she left Tanager Square on an electric bike and never made it home, along with the request that anyone who sees her or knows where she might be should call the sheriff's office right away. Some readers kept going, others stopped. A few shared the post with a line of their own. "Please help bring her home. She is loved and missed. New Port Richey friends, keep your eyes open." For people in your age group, this may feel like a strange mix of old and new. The purpose is the same as the flyers that used to be taped to grocery store windows and telephone poles. The method is different. Instead of a sheet of paper curling in the sun, it's a square image jumping from one screen to another, traveling through group chats and neighborhood pages and online message boards. Back at home, the adults who love her watched that process with a kind of numb disbelief. It is one thing to know, in your private fear, that your child is missing. It is another to see her face and name sent out to thousands of strangers, asking for help. Every share feels like both a lifeline and a reminder. A lifeline, because it means more people are looking. A reminder, because it means the nightmare is real enough to be printed and passed around. Meanwhile, deputies were doing the quieter, less visible part of their job. They drove the streets around Tanager Square, looking for any sign of a girl on an electric bike who matched Mireya's description. They checked places where teens might gather: parks, convenience stores, fast food restaurants, apartment complexes. They spoke with people who might know where she spends time, or who she might have been planning to see that day. They weighed what they were hearing against their own experience with similar cases. For many of you watching, this is where frustration often builds. You've seen stories where a teenager goes missing, and the family feels the response is too slow or too soft. You've seen others where authorities act quickly and still find nothing. The truth is that, especially in those first days, investigators are always walking a tightrope. They have to treat a missing 17-year-old as someone who might be in danger, while recognizing that they may also be dealing with a young person who left by choice and could come back at any time. On the community side, the reaction was its own kind of search. People began to notice teens on bikes a little more than usual. In neighborhoods around New Port Richey, it would not have been uncommon for someone at a gas station or grocery store to glance twice at a girl on an e-bike, asking themselves, could that be her? Some may have picked up the phone and called in what they saw: a possible sighting, a hunch, a feeling that something about a situation was off. Those calls matter, even when they don't lead anywhere. They give deputies places to check. timelines to confirm, patterns to look for. Not every tip can be chased with equal intensity. Some are vague, some are clearly mistaken, some are too old by the time they reach the sheriff's office to be useful. But each one is a sign that at least someone is paying attention, that Mireya is not just a name on a screen, but a real teenager people are trying to recognize in the world around them. Still, as the days after December 3rd began to stack up, the most important update did not come. There was no official statement saying that she had been located. No note that she had returned home safe. The alert stayed up. The posts stayed in place. Her status did not change. For a family, that ongoing absence sits underneath every public message. To the outside world, it looks like a short paragraph. We are still searching for Mireya. To the people living it, it means another night checking the driveway and finding it empty. Another night listening for a bike chain rattling on the porch or a key in the lock and hearing nothing. And so the search moved out of those first frantic hours into the slower, more grinding phase that follows. A phase where the question is no longer just who saw her leave, but whether anyone, anywhere, will see her next. As soon as a missing teen alert uses the word runaway, something changes in the way many people read it. The urgency fades a little in their minds. A runaway, they think, is a kid who will show up when they're done being angry or rebellious. Someone who just needs to cool off. The problem with that way of thinking is that it does not match the reality of what a 17-year-old like Mireya is facing once she is out there on her own. On paper, Mireya is described as a missing, possibly runaway 17-year-old who left the Tanager Square area on an electric bike and did not come home. That is the language of forms and reports. But step back from the official phrasing and picture the real situation. A teenage girl, still legally a child, riding away in the middle of the day with no adult by her side, and no guarantee of where she will sleep that night, who will feed her, or who she will encounter along the way. Whether she chose to leave or not, the risks around her do not care about the label attached to her name. If you are in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s, you have seen enough of life to know what can happen in the space between home and wherever a young person thinks they are going. An electric bike gives freedom, but it does not give protection. It does not shield a teenager from drivers who are not paying attention, from strangers who notice that she is alone, from people who might use charm or pressure to steer her toward places she never intended to go. In a car, there is at least a barrier of glass and metal, a locked door, a license plate that can be traced. On a bus, there are other passengers, a driver, a route. On an electric bike, a 17-year-old is exposed to whatever and whoever crosses her path. She can be followed without realizing it. She can be approached at a red light or in a parking lot. She can be persuaded to take a different turn, to go just a little farther, to trust someone who seems friendly at first. That is part of what makes cases like Mireya's so difficult to sit with. Nothing about her last known actions looks dramatic on the surface. There is no report of a struggle at the edge of a parking lot, no witness describing a scream, no security footage of someone forcing her into a vehicle. From the outside, it can be tempting to say, she must have wanted to go, and leave it at that. But the world does not divide itself neatly between wanted to go and forced to go. There is a wide space in between where a teenager can make a choice without fully understanding what they are choosing, or where that choice might lead. For law enforcement, using the word runaway in a report does not mean we don't care. It means they are trying to describe the initial circumstances as accurately as they can with the information available. Maybe there was tension at home. Maybe there were signs she had prepared to be gone longer than a few hours. Maybe someone heard her say she was leaving. Whatever the reason, the term is meant to help structure the early investigation. But the dangers a runaway teen faces are not smaller than those in any other missing child case. In some ways, they can be greater. A teenager who has left home, whether in anger, confusion, or under the influence of someone else, is often operating without the safety net they are used to. They may not have steady access to money, food, or safe shelter. They may rely on people who do not have their best interests at heart. They may be more willing to accept rides, favors, or places to stay from strangers or near strangers. People who appear helpful on the surface but have their own plans. Add an electric bike to that equation, and you have a young person with enough mobility to travel farther than walking distance, but still without the protections that come with being in a monitored, controlled environment. She can cross multiple neighborhoods in an afternoon, moving in and out of areas where no one knows her face. To someone watching her pass, she might look like any other teen just out for a ride. Not a missing girl whose family is watching the clock and willing the phone to ring. From the perspective of people in your age group, this can clash with memories of what running away looked like decades ago. Maybe you picture a kid stuffing clothes into a backpack and walking down the street on foot. Today, that same impulse can be combined with the speed of an electric bike and the reach of social media. A teenager can leave quickly, travel farther, and arrange to meet people they have never actually met in person before. All of that increases the chances that they will find themselves in situations they cannot easily navigate or escape. This is why, when we talk about Mireya's case, it is important not to let the runaway label shut down our concern. From the outside, we do not know exactly what was happening in her mind when she left Tanager Square. We do not know if she was planning to be gone for a short time or a long time, if she was planning to go to a specific place or just riding around. We do not know what or who she might have been counting on. What we do know is that as the days passed and she did not return, the original reason for her leaving became less important than the simple fact that she was still gone. For the adults who love her, the question is no longer, why did she ride away? It is, where is she now, and is she safe? They are not comforted by the idea that she may have chosen to leave. Choice does not protect a 17-year-old from the wrong car pulling up beside her, or the wrong person offering a place to stay. Choice does not protect her from the reality that, at some point, an electric bike will run out of battery or break down, leaving her on foot in a place where she may not have anyone she can trust. From the community's perspective, seeing runaway on a poster can create a dangerous kind of numbness. It can make a teenager's disappearance seem ordinary, even routine. But there is nothing ordinary about a child being unreachable for days or weeks at a time. There is nothing routine about a family lying awake each night, thinking about the last time they saw their daughter swing a leg over an electric bike and push off into the afternoon, not knowing that it was the last clear image they would have of her. Cases like Mireya's ask something uncomfortable of all of us, to hold two realities at once. Yes, some teenagers leave home by choice. And yes, even those teenagers can end up in very real danger very quickly. The label that ends up on a report does not change the responsibility we have, as a society, to keep paying attention. As long as there is no proof that she has been found, no official word that she is safe, the focus has to remain on what can be done now, not on judging whatever happened in the hours before she rode away. Because at the end of the day, the question that matters most is not whether a teenager fits neatly into a box labeled runaway or abduction. It is whether she is still out there, somewhere, waiting for someone to notice her, to make a call, and to give her a chance to come home. As the days after December 3rd turned into weeks, the shape of Mireya's story changed again. The first wave of alarm, the rush of shares, the patrol cars circling familiar streets, all of that began to quiet in public. New posts took over people's feeds. New problems demanded attention. For many in Port Richey, the alert about a missing teenager on an electric bike became just one more piece of news they had seen, felt bad about, and then scrolled past. For her family, nothing about it became just news. Inside the home she left behind, the timeline never resets. Every morning still starts with the same reality. A 17-year-old girl rode away one afternoon and has not walked back through the door. Her bike has not been heard on the driveway. Her steps have not sounded in the hallway. The smallest things, a bedroom door half open, a jacket hanging on the back of a chair, a photo taped to a mirror, can feel like both comfort and cruelty. They prove she is real. They underline that she is gone. Out in the community, the search does not stop, but it does change. Deputies are no longer driving the same streets hour after hour hoping to catch sight of an electric bike. Instead, they are watching for her in a different way. Her name and description sit in their systems, ready to surface if an officer anywhere in the area encounters a teenage girl who cannot easily explain where she belongs. If someone calls in a possible sighting, it is still taken down, still weighed, still checked against what little is known. The case may not be on the evening news every night, but it is not closed. For people in your age group, this stage can be the hardest to understand from the outside. Early on, it is easy to say, we have to do something. Later, when there are no dramatic updates, it can feel like nothing more can be done. But cases like Mireya's do not live or die on big breakthroughs alone. They often depend on something much smaller and more ordinary, one person paying attention at the right moment. That might be someone in Pasco County standing in line at a convenience store who realizes the girl on the bike outside looks familiar. It might be a driver who notices a teenager walking alone late at night and thinks, she looks like that missing girl, instead of brushing the thought aside. It might be a worker at a shop, a security guard, a neighbor who has seen a new face around their complex and decides that a quiet call to the sheriff's office is better than staying silent and wondering. None of those actions require anyone to be a detective. They do not mean confronting a young person or trying to be a hero. They simply mean noticing and then letting the people whose job it is to investigate decide what to do with the information. For those watching from far away, it is true that you may never cross paths with Mireya. You may live in another state or another country, where the streets of Port Richey are just a name on a map. Even so, her story can still leave you with something to carry. It is a reminder that missing teen alerts are not background noise. Each one marks the place where a normal day split in two, before someone rode away and after they did not return. It is also a reminder of how thin the line can be between safety and uncertainty. A short ride on an electric bike, a few hours without contact, a decision that she'll probably be home soon is no longer enough. For parents and grandparents, that may be a reason to talk with the young people in your life about the choices they make when they leave the house. Not from a place of fear, but from a place of wanting them to understand how quickly circumstances can change. As of now, the most honest thing we can say about Mireya's case is that it has no clear ending. The last solid point on the map is still the Tanager Square area on that Wednesday afternoon. The last solid detail is still that she left on an electric bike and did not make it back. Between that moment and this one lies a stretch of time filled with unanswered questions, heavy silence, and a kind of hope that refuses to disappear, even when it is tired. Until there is a statement that she has been found safe, or until the facts change in some other undeniable way, Mireya remains what she has been since that day. A missing 17-year-old girl whose story is not supposed to end with a question mark. For her family, every person who learns her name, every viewer who really looks at her face instead of glancing past it, is one more chance that someone, somewhere, will recognize her and make the call that finally brings her home. If you stayed with me through Mireya's story, thank you for giving her your time and attention. If you want more long-form, non-graphic true crime about real missing persons and unsolved cases, there are other stories waiting for you here. When this video ends, click on the playlist on your screen to keep watching the next case. And if you'd like YouTube to keep recommending this kind of careful, respectful coverage, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a thoughtful comment with your views. Your support helps these stories reach more people who might be able to make a difference.